Why your genes aren't your destiny. Over 100 years ago, Thomas Edison foretold that the physician of the future would give no medication, but would interest his or her patient in a proper diet, in the care of the human frame, and the cause and prevention of disease. Now, sadly, that's not how we physicians act. No, we know very little about nutrition, even less about the root cause of disease, and we are still in love with the newest drugs and the latest technology. And as a young faculty physician teaching the new medical students, taking care of my patients, I thought the very best way to do that was to use the newest and latest drugs. That is, until I became a patient with a chronic progressive disease for which there is no cure. In 2000, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis on the basis of a history of visual dimming 13 years earlier, a new problem with my left leg, lesions in my spinal cord, and abnormal spinal fluid. I saw the science. I knew that within 10 years of diagnosis, 1/3 will have difficulty walking, needing a cane, walker, or wheelchair, and 1/2 will be unable to work because of severe, profound fatigue. I had 2 young children. I was the main breadwinner for our family. I could not let that happen. So I decided to treat my disease aggressively. I sought out the best MS center I could find, the Cleveland Clinic. I saw their best people. I took the newest drugs. Still, within 3 years, my disease had transitioned to secondary progressive multiple sclerosis. My physicians told me that at this point of the disease, there are no more spontaneous remissions, that functions once lost are gone forever. And so I got the tilt-recline wheelchair, I took the chemotherapy, I took the miracle drug Tysabri, but I continued to slowly decline. Conventional medicine was not going to stop my slide into a bedridden and demented life. But I knew my basic science colleagues in their labs were discovering the secrets that would be used to guide MS care in the future. And so I started reading about the animal models for multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, Huntington's disease. Eventually, I found studies which had used vitamins and supplements that had protected those mouse brains. And so I translated those mouse-sized doses into human-sized doses, and I started my first rounds of self-experimentation. The speed of my decline slowed, and I was very grateful, but I was still declining. So I continued to read the science. I found papers that described the genetic risk, and I learned that if I had a parent or a sibling with MS, my risk of getting it was 3 to 5%. If I had 2 parents, the risk rose to 30%. Always, it was a very complicated interaction between genes, and there are so far about 100 have been identified, that increase your risk ever so slightly, and the environment. The scientific term for this is epigenetics. It is how factors out in the environment speak to my DNA and will turn genes on, making them more active, and turn other genes off, making them silent. And in so doing, it will change the phenotype. And the phenotype is just a big, fancy word for the appearance and performance of the body. And the healthy phenotype is called the wild type. That wild type is healthy, robust, and disease-resistant. But the environment, by turning some genes on and other genes off, and doing this without changing the DNA sequence, can transform a once healthy, wild, disease-resistant body into an inflamed, sickly, disease-prone one. And furthermore, it does this by putting marks on our DNA without changing the DNA sequence. But these marks will be passed on to your children, your grandchildren, and your great-grandchildren. That's huge. So now I want to know, so what are these environmental factors? And most importantly, were there any that were under my control that I could do something about? And so I began to continue to study and read. I'm going to summarize some of what I've learned in that journey. The food that we eat provides the vitamins, minerals, essential fats, antioxidants that my cells will use to conduct the chemistry of life. But if the food I eat, delicious, tasty, yummy, so addictive, fails to provide those key building blocks, the chemistry of life does not happen properly. Molecules do not get made or get made with the wrong shape, which leads to the foundation, the seeds of chronic disease. This graphic depicts the kilograms of sugar consumed per person per year. In 1700, we ate less than 5 kilograms of sugar. That's less than 10 pounds per person per year. By 2000, we're eating 70 kilograms, more than 150 pounds of sugar per person per year, and our children are eating even more. All that sugar crowds out the foods that provides the building blocks that we need to run the chemistry of life so our cells will thrive. And furthermore, all that sugar speaks to my DNA, turning genes on, other genes off, shifting a once healthy wild phenotype into an inflamed, sickly, disease-prone phenotype, and increasing my risk for high blood pressure, obesity, diabetes, heart disease, neurological problems, mental health problems, and autoimmunity. You know, and there's one more problem with food, a potential problem. In the genetically vulnerable individual, gluten, the protein in wheat, rye, barley, and many ancient grains, causes an abnormal elevation of our immune cells, increased inflammation in the body, and will again shift us from that healthy, wild, disease-resistant body, transforming us into the inflamed, sickly, disease-prone body, and increasing the probability of neurological problems, mental health problems, and autoimmunity. The next factor is the toxin level. Now, since World War II, we've done better living through chemistry. Over 80,000 chemicals have been registered with the Environmental Protection Agency because of toxic effects on our cells. And as you heard earlier, these compounds are so pervasive in the environment, several studies have found over 200 different synthetic compounds, toxins, in the cord blood of new babies, the breast milk of new moms, things like herbicides, pesticides, plastics, solvents, dioxin, heavy metals like lead, mercury, arsenic, which confuse the chemistry of our cells, disrupt our hormonal signaling, increase the inflammation, and again, speaks to my DNA, shifting what genes are on, what genes are off, and transforming that once wild, healthy phenotype into an inflamed, sickly, disease-prone phenotype, and increasing my risk for high blood pressure, obesity, diabetes, heart disease, neurological problems, mental health problems, autoimmunity, and cancer. The next issue is our physical activity level. Before the dawn of agriculture, a mere 10,000 years ago, we were foragers and hunters. The women would travel 2 to 3 miles a day, and the men 6 to 9. But in today's society, we sit and stand in one place all day, and then for leisure, we sit on our butt. That inactivity speaks to our hormones, shifting the balance, increasing the inflammation. It also speaks to my genes, turning genes on and others off, and shifting that once healthy wild phenotype, transforming it into the inflamed, sickly, disease-prone one, and increasing the risk again for high blood pressure, obesity, diabetes, heart disease, neurological problems, mental health problems, and autoimmunity. And the next factor is stress. Now, when faced with a threat, my body will secrete hormones, so I'm faster, stronger, and then when I'm safe, I rapidly clear those hormones, get back to the idle state, where my body takes up the work of digesting, making hormones, fighting infections, and growing. But if I am continually under stress, continually secreting those stress hormones, I never get back to that resting idle state. that disrupts my hormonal balance, increases my inflammation, and again, shifts which genes are on, which genes are off, and transforms me from the healthy, wild phenotype to the inflamed, sickly, disease-prone phenotype. And again, increasing the risk of high blood pressure, obesity, diabetes, heart disease, neurological problems, mental health problems, and autoimmunity. So here I am, 2007. I've had 6 years of slow, steady decline. My belly and back muscles are so weak, I cannot sit in a chair like you are now. Instead, I rely on a zero-gravity chair. I have one at work, one at home. I can walk short distances using 2 walking sticks. Otherwise, I use my zero-gravity chair. I have severe fatigue. I'm exhausted by 10 in the morning. And I've been losing my keys and my phone. I had to replace my phone 3 times that summer. I know I cannot work much longer. And that is when I create a diet and lifestyle program designed to address the food, toxins, physical activity, and stress level. For food, I turned to science to identify what were the vitamins, minerals, essential fats, antioxidants that science says brain cells need to thrive. And I found 31. And then I turned to my forager, hunter ancestors to design an eating plan that looks like this. I start with 3 cups. And by the way, that's a dinner plate heaped high. So 3 cups of leafy greens. You can have them cooked or raw. 3 cups of deeply colored vegetables, carrots, beets, berries, peaches, oranges. Just has to be colored all the way through. And 3 cups of sulfur-rich vegetables in the cabbage family, onion family, mushroom family. Grass-fed meats, organ meats, wild fish, and seaweed. And to reduce my risk of food sensitivity issues, I eliminated the gluten-containing grains. To reduce my toxin exposure, I switched to eating only organic foods and using only organic personal care products. And to help my body eliminate the toxins that were no doubt stored in my fat from all those years of eating conventionally, I ate 3 cups of greens, 3 cups of colored vegetables and fruits, 3 cups of sulfur-rich cabbage family, onion family, mushroom family, because those food groups stimulate the enzymes responsible for the processing and elimination of toxins. And to improve the elimination of lead and mercury, I ate seaweed because you need iodine to eliminate those metals. And I needed to improve my physical activity. Now, I was a former athlete, and actually when I was diagnosed with MS, I knew I had to keep working out every day to stay as strong as possible. So I did, but they had to get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. All I could do was this very small 10-minute workout. But now I added a technique that the athletes have used for decades, electrical stimulation of muscles. And I did that while I did my exercises. And then to reduce my stress, I added daily meditation. Within just 3 months of this, my fatigue was gone. I was able to stop Provigil, a medication I'd used for 5 years for MS-related fatigue. At 6 months, I could walk throughout the hospital without a cane. My physician said, well, frankly, he was quite amazed, and so was his nurse. And they said that I could taper and stop my disease-modifying drugs. And at 9 months, I got on my bike, pedaled around the block the first time in 5 years. And at 12 months, I did an 18-mile bicycle tour with my family. So in 1 year, I went from tilt recline wheelchair, utterly exhausted, struggling with brain fog, to walking, not having brain fog, and pedaling my bike 18 miles. Obviously, this transformed me as a person, and it transformed me as a physician. How I understood disease and health was very different, and how I chose to practice medicine was also transformed. I began to talk to my patients about the quality of the food that they were eating, the toxin exposures, their physical activity level, and their stress level. And I began to teach them about what I now call the Wahls diet, in the Wahls protocol. I taught them to eat these radical things known as vegetables, greens, colors, sulfur, 9 cups a day. Crowds out a lot of bad food, and to go organic. And I saw fatigue resolve, moods improve, headaches resolve, pain diminish, blood pressure normalize, blood sugars normalize, and most importantly, the need for medication steadily decline, often to none, even for people with serious autoimmune problems. And I then transformed the research that I did. I now study the same protocol that I used for my own recovery to treat others with multiple sclerosis and traumatic brain injury. The multimodal intervention, that was essentially what I did, the Wahls protocol. For patients with secondary progressive MS, those are people who have no more spontaneous remissions. You expect them to steadily decline. We're able to show that, yes, people could do vegetables, exercise, meditate. The biggest side effect was if you were overweight or obese, you lost weight and you got back to a healthy weight. That's a tough side effect. And the fatigue severity scale, which goes from 7 to 1, 1 equaling no fatigue, decreased by 2.38, from 5.70 at baseline to 3.32 at 12 months, 0.0008 for a p-value. That's the largest reported improvement in energy or reduction in fatigue to date. By comparison, the studies using Provigil, which is the #1 medication used for MS-related fatigue, that reduces fatigue severity scale by 0.75. They were really thrilled with that. The p-value was 0.07, not significant, but a favorable trend. I took it for 5 years. I was very grateful for the small amount of help it did. Yes, medications can be very helpful, and I do use them. They can control symptoms, but they do not address the root cause of why people develop chronic disease, which is the transformation of a once healthy phenotype into a sickly, inflamed, disease-prone phenotype because of diet and lifestyle choices. Medications will do nothing about the diet that does not provide the building blocks you need to thrive, or the years of toxic exposure, or the years of physical inactivity, or the years of chronic stress. For if we do not address those diet and lifestyle factors, our patients will get steadily worse. Their disease will progress. And every time I see them in clinic, they will need more medications, higher doses, and I'll be making more new diagnoses. So, 100 years ago, Thomas Edison had said that we would move from, in essence, medicines to diet and lifestyle. And it's true, modern medicine is mostly not there yet. But we all could be. We all could herald in an epidemic of health. Because every day, you, all of you, choose what you eat and what you do. Every day. You could choose to eat 9 cups of vegetables, switch to organic foods, personal care products, move your bodies, and meditate. We could all become that physician of the future. We could all herald in an epidemic of health. Every day, you choose what you eat and what you do. Now that you know, what choices will you make? Thank you.